Well, welcome everybody. We're so happy to have you here with us today. To those of you who are in the members of the Essex County Learning Community, we're always so very happy to see you. And to those of you who are joining us either from another district or another organization, we are so happy to have you with us in this space and want to give you a warm welcome. My name is Jane Feinberg. I'm founder and principal of Full Faith Communications, and in collaboration with the Center for Collaborative Education, we run the Essex County Learning Community. The goal of the ECLC, as we call it, is to create and sustain a community of practitioners to lift up and scale systemic approaches that enable schools to better serve learners with diverse learning assets and needs. I say we've used that language very intently, diverse learning assets and needs, because every student brings assets and needs to the table, no matter who they are. And we also pride ourselves in, or at least aspire to, providing a safe space away from the fire hose of daily life in schools for teachers to learn, all educators actually, to learn, to reflect, and to grow, something that educators do not get enough of in schools and need a lot more of. And we try to hold them accountable to themselves, to give that to themselves in order to be able to learn and grow, because if educators are growing, so are students. We are here today for a big treat. One of ECLC's partners is Eye to Eye, a national nonprofit organization that is, its mission is, it's a big mission and an important one, to improve the life of every young person with learning differences like learning disabilities, ADHD, etc. And this is an organization that I got to know a number of years ago, I've been getting to know for a while, that does a lot of near-peer mentoring. Whether it's college students with middle school students with younger students, believing that that lived experience can be shared and modeled. And it is a very, very successful organization. It was launched in a dorm room at Brown University quite a number of years ago. And I've had the pleasure of watching it continue to grow and develop and become a mature and really outstanding organization. And that's why we've brought them here. We are very interested in the ECLC, in student voice, how we amplify it, and especially for those students who are often marginalized or minoritized in schools. And we know that that happens, and I know that we all want to improve that. So we have today, beyond the IEP, building empathy and student voice. We all know that the pandemic laid bare all kinds of fault lines in school systems, and I think they laid bare an opportunity as well to get it right for all kids. So with that, I would like to introduce the people who are going to be presenting today. And if you would just give a little wave from your Brady Bunch window, that would be great when I call your name. So we have the Eye to Eye team, David Badillo, he's the Director of Partnerships. Thank you, David. We have Robbie Bryce, the Program Manager. Thanks, Robbie. Coming to us from Jamaica. So he's got warm weather there, I assume. Is that warm? Is it warm?
It's so hot.
Okay, good. We have Mike Schumacher, who's the Director of Student Services for Eye to Eye. Where are you? There you are, Mike. Okay. We have an Eye to Eye alum who is now a special ed teacher in a school in Fall River, Massachusetts, and that's Vanessa Montgomery. So talk about a success story. We're so excited to have you here. And then we have our student panel members. We have Logan John, and he will introduce himself a little bit very shortly. And we have Carly Robbie, who will also introduce herself. So we are really excited to be bringing you Eye to Eye, I'm so excited to hear about the experiences of young people, and also how Eye to Eye has very creatively pivoted this year during the pandemic. So without further ado, I need to tell you that we are recording. So we are recording this right now, and there is closed captioning that should be at the top of your screen. So now, without further ado, I'm turning it over to you, Robbie.
Sorry about that. Couldn't unmute myself. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for attending and joining us today. As Jane said, I am Robbie Bryce. I'm the program manager of educator training with Eye National, and I am super happy to be with everyone today. As Jane sort of framed for us, our focus today is based around two things, right? Building empathy and really hearing from the student voice, because that's how we, that's who we're there to serve, and so that's who we learn from, right? So I'm super excited for you all to hear from two of our panelists today, Logan and Carly, who I will actually give an opportunity in just a moment as we get started to introduce themselves. But I also want us just to frame ourselves and really ground ourselves in our focus, right? So again, those buzzwords are empathy and student voice. We want to just make sure that we're coming in with that ear, listening and really building our own empathy so that we become humble learners of our students, right? So with that being said, and that's sort of being our thinking or our thought process right now, I'll allow Carly to kind of get us started and just kind of tell us a little bit about herself. And then from there, we'll allow Logan to do the same.
Hello, I'm Carly Robbie. I'm from Denver, Colorado. I'm a junior in high school at George Washington. And I have ADHD and slow processing speed. And I'm really excited to be here. I'm really passionate about making sure that every student has a voice and is taken care of in the best way possible.
Hi, I'm Logan Johns. I am a current junior in high school. I have dyslexia and ADHD, and like Carly said, I'm really passionate about Eye to Eye, really passionate about my learning difference, and I'm just really proud to be here.
Awesome. And so before we actually turn it over to Vanessa, I want to just sort of frame also our time together. So of course, we'll have an opportunity to hear from Logan and as well as Carly sort of discuss their experiences as a student that learns differently, right? After that, we'll actually break out into breakout rooms where we're able to sort of unpack that a little bit more and just we won't have, it's not a script or anything like that. We really just want you to have an opportunity, more of a debrief, I would say, for lack of a better word. We'll debrief, sort of unpack, and just if there are any questions or comments or just anything that you would like to add to the conversation, that will be your space to do so. Then we'll come back and we'll have a whole group share out where we'll actually sort of talk about some of the things that we may have talked about in our smaller breakout rooms. Then I'll actually go over two strategies that we at Eye view as super impactful, yet simple strategies that you as educators can take or implement in your classroom to become, again, that humble learner of your students. So that's sort of that will be the flow of our time together. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Vanessa to get us started.
Hello, everybody. My name is Vanessa Montgomery. I am currently an 8th grade special education teacher in Fall River at a charter school. I moved during a pandemic. I'm originally from California, have lived in San Diego for 11 years and moved to Providence, Rhode Island last summer. So it's been quite the experience, and I'm excited to be here. So a little bit about myself, besides that I'm a special education teacher. I was diagnosed in the 3rd grade with a learning disability with dyslexia. I was the kid that they were like, this girl's never gonna read. And I was able to catch up on my reading. I'm super ashamed of the stigma that came along with my learning disability. It wasn't until college at UC Santa Cruz where I randomly fell into Eye to Eye's hands, if you will. I was like the driver that would just drive the mentors to the middle school. And then one day I randomly were like, hey, we need you to be a mentor. And at that moment, it really changed my life. I was able to work with a 6th grade girl who told me about her learning difference and how she was ashamed. And at that moment, I was like, how can I help this young girl accept her learning difference when I haven't accepted mine. That was at the age of 23. So I've kind of since then dedicated my life and what I'm doing to help students who also feel the same way that I feel. And that's something that never goes away. You always kind of have that little bit of insecurity, and it just you learn how to overcome it as you get older. So I'm super happy to be here. I'm excited to work with Carly and with Logan. And just having eye to eye here with all of you. With that being said, I am co-host. If you have questions, you can obviously make it public, but if you'd like to ask me privately, you can do so. So that feature is in there right now. So let's go ahead and we will begin. So the first question, we're gonna get deep right away. So, and Logan and Carly, whoever wants to go first, you can either take turns or just raise your hand or just go ahead and hop on the mic, okay? So my first question is, what is your learning difference? How does it affect you in school and outside of school?
I could go ahead and take this one first. So what is my learning difference? I have dyslexia and ADHD. I was diagnosed when I was about 8, and you know, I was one of the kids that was told like I will never immune to anything. People told me I was dumb. People told me I like could not read or do any math like whatsoever. And now I like to think of myself as someone who wants to be successful. So you know, it has affected me because, well, you know, I learned different than most of the kids that are surrounded by me, you know, and I grew up in an area where your learning difference doesn't really mean squat, because all of my life I've been going to this school called the Lab School of Washington, and the school literally specializes in learning differences, and which is really, really good for me because it's a community where I'm like where everyone is aware of their learning difference and no one is shamed because of it. So I would say it has affected me in a very positive way over the years, just because I live in a school where no one's judged and everyone's just themselves to be themselves.
Awesome job, Robbie. Now, Carly?
Logan.
Logan.
I was diagnosed, I have ADHD and slow processing, as I said before. I was diagnosed when I was in 6th grade, per my request, because I could tell that I was very different. I was having trouble reading. I went to a high functioning school. It was called the Rick Center. I'm sure that means nothing, but I went to the Rick Center for like gifted and talented, and I was falling behind when it came to reading and it came to math, and I was really struggling and I had no one to help me. And I finally went to my parents and I said, something is wrong. And I got tested. They really didn't want to get me tested because I live in a family where it's, you'll figure it out, it'll happen, which I think is a very common situation for a lot of students, or parents are ashamed to admit that their student has a learning difference, especially because I am or went to a very intelligent school full of intelligent students. The fact that I needed support was beyond what they could have ever thought. And so that was a very difficult thing that I had to handle in my life with my parents. But it's affected me in being I'm very much a self-advocate. I like to advocate for other people because it's an experience that I don't want anyone to have. And it's affected me negatively because it definitely has implications on my intelligence, that I might not be as smart as I am, or should be held to a lower standard, which is very difficult to have to deal with. But overall, it also has helped me develop a lot of social skills, and I'd like to think that I have a very high EQ in terms of being able to understand people.
Awesome. Thank you, Carly and Logan, for opening up with that question. I know that it might have been a little difficult, but we appreciate it. So we're going to move on to the next question. Let's start with a positive question. So what is one positive experience you had in school? And Carly, you go ahead and take it away this time.
Okay. Something positive I had in high school is like probably the most recent one I can think of is I had this wonderful econ teacher. He pushed me really hard, and he wanted me to do my best, but he also understood that as a student with a learning disability, I would need some support. And we got very close, and he opened up to me and told me that he also had similar struggles, hinting to the fact that he also had a learning difference, which really strengthened our bond as a student-teacher relationship. And it was really important to me. And now he's a person I can go to. And he wanted me to succeed, but he also understood that I would need some support, and that I would need moments where I could just be a person. And that was a really important relationship that I had. And it really made me realize that when you have a person that really cares about your success, like, it can change your life.
That's amazing. So that connection with a teacher really, really helped you. And by him sharing his story of what he's experienced really helped too. Thank you so much. Okay, Logan, your turn.
Yeah, I was going to say, a positive thing in school for me is definitely widening my circle of trust. And what I mean by that is over the years, I've at my school, I've had a lot of people to come up to me, and I just trust them, and I'm friends with them right away because everyone at my school is just so nice and so caring, so loving, and most importantly, they're all respectful people. So definitely for me, meeting a lot of people at my school with learning differences, because like I said to the previous question, at my school, everyone there has some sort of a learning difference. Like, my best friend ever has ADHD and dyslexia, the same thing as me. So, I think everyone being so nice just kind of made it one big positive moment, especially the teachers too, because
That's awesome. So you're talking more of like community, and the community that you've built around you that has helped you and created this positive experience in school. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, moving on to question number 3. Now we're going to talk about the opposite. What is one negative experience you've had in school? And we'll start with Carly again.
Okay, unfortunately, there has been quite a few, and I think that that's pretty consistent for students with learning disabilities. But the one that I can think of, like off the top of my head, is a experience I had with my biology teacher. I'm a part of a program called IB. Don't know if you don't know what that is, but if you don't, it's like AP, but on steroids. And it's very difficult, and it's full of very intelligent students, most whom are neurotypical. And I went to my teacher and I asked him for some help, because not only had I been struggling in his class in terms of me being a student with a learning disability, but I had also just gone through something very difficult in my life. And I was asking for some support and asking for him to give me the benefit of the doubt and know that I was going to complete my work, and I just needed that extra support from a teacher. And he decided no. He said, "No, sorry, you can't." I said, "Why?" He was very clear with me, and he said, "Due to the fact that you are an IB, I have no problem believing that you will be fine." And I said, "My intelligence doesn't mean that I don't need help. I still have a learning disability. I still struggle. That doesn't stop me. Being smart and having a learning disability are two independent things." And him saying that to me and saying that I didn't deserve to have the supports that I do, brought up a very important issue for me. And that was like understanding students to the fullest extent, and like understanding high achieving, high functioning students with learning disabilities and with mental illness. And his lack of support for me was very jarring, for sure.
That's really interesting, Carly, because on one hand, you have this experience with this teacher that's opened up with you and it wants to help you and support you. And then on the other hand, for your bad experience, you have a teacher that was closed off and didn't even want to see to try to help you. So I think that you have a great experience that's positive, but also a negative experience that also has to do with the educator that you're working with. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, Logan, your turn. What is one negative experience you have had in school?
I could think of multiple, but there's one experience that comes to mind is the school before I go to now. So the previous one, this experience for me was really traumatic because I still remember this, and I was about 8 or 7. So basically, I was in a classroom, and not all of my teachers were aware that I had a learning difference. So I had a really hard time writing, and the teachers just thought I was just stupid, right? They just thought I couldn't really read or write or do anything like that. So and I also at the time had a really bad I had a really bad time transitioning words into action. So I would always I would stutter for no reason. People would be like, "What's wrong with you?" So I think there's one day when we were supposed to be writing a summary about a book, and I was writing and I misspelled a word, but I also drew my stick figures like black, like as in like a comic, and so I identify as a black man, right? So for me, I used to draw my comics that we're supposed to draw as black because that's what I identify as. And next thing you know, I'm in the principal's office because the teacher says I cannot read or write, and I drew a wrong picture. When in reality, I was just drawing my stick figures black because that's what I saw in myself. So in summary, that was one of the most traumatic experiences I will ever go through, ever, because not only am I looked at differently because of the color of my skin, I'm also looked at differently because of my LD and because of the way I communicate with others. So that is definitely one thing that comes into mind.
Thank you, Logan, for sharing that. And, I'm going to agree with that. As someone that has a learning disability as well, every single one of us, our worst time in school is when a teacher told us that we couldn't do it because we couldn't learn the way everyone else learned. So I have those feelings with you. So you're not alone. And obviously all the teachers on this call too, it's good for them to hear this too, because even for me, sometimes I say things that I know I shouldn't say and it accidentally comes out, and then I have to go say sorry and have that empathy piece of understanding what it's like to learn differently and just not get it right away. So thank you, Carly and Logan, for sharing that with us. Okay, question number 4. Is there one person in school who inspires you and who you think is an ally? And Logan, go ahead.
Yeah. So like I said, Lab is a really loving community when it comes to socializing, making new friends, and widening your circle of trust. So I have a lot of mentors in my life that have always been there for me because I've also had a lot of traumatic events over the years. But again, this person I have in mind is Christopher Edmonds. He's my internship coordinator. He's actually one of the people that introduced me to Eye to Eye. And so in 2019, my stepfather passed away, and he was a mentor of mine that was really, really important to me. And he was like a second dad. And when Mr. Edmonds heard of that, he made sure that I didn't go home like alone, sad, or crying, but he also made sure I got the best education I could get. because he told me that I deserve a better education than I was getting at the time. And he also just made sure that I was happy. And as black men, and especially with me because I have a learning difference, it was really hard for me to express my feelings when my stepfather passed away, because I was sad and I was not doing the best in school. But Mr. Evans also made sure that even though this loss sucked, it would fuel me to do better in the future. And it would fuel me to make sure that I get the best education I deserve and that I need.
Thank you so much, Logan. And I'm glad that he was there for you and that he's your ally. That's great. Okay, Carly, your turn.
I have a 504 manager at my school. She's the school psychiatrist, and she's like my favorite person on earth. She is my ally. She is my guardian. Like, she has, I started meeting with her freshman year, and immediately we hit it off. We were very similar, and she was very honest with me, very open with me, which made me feel comfortable to be open and honest with her, because that's something that I've struggled with in my life, is being able to express how I'm feeling and how I'm doing. And she recognized that and decided to open up with me, and she leveled with me like I was a person and that she was a person, and it wasn't anything more than that. And she also she works really hard. She's inspired me because she works really hard. She works with over 150 students, is on her caseload. We have a very large school. She has 150 kids on her caseload. She cares about each and every one of them. She wants to see all of them succeed. And she has had struggle in her life, and she doesn't want that for any of her students. And when it does, she takes it personally and cares and works really hard to see them succeed. And honestly, she's just someone that I know that I'm safe with. And it was really important for me to find her, because at my old school, when I went to just a normal middle school, I didn't have that. We had a psychiatrist, but her son went to the school, and she played favorites, and it was very hard to connect with her as a person. And to have that in high school, especially as I'm changing and growing the most as a person, was really impactful for my life. And I'll probably never forget her.
Well, that's great to hear, Carly. I see also another theme with both of you is the whole just sitting down and having a regular conversation that doesn't really have to do with school, doesn't have to do with being in the classroom, just opening up and having those conversations. That's really, really awesome. Okay, so we have 2 more questions left, so we'll get through them. So this one's a little different, but I like this topic. So why is it important to acknowledge other intersectionalities of students beyond their LD or learning disability? Sorry, we use LD a lot in eye to eye, and we always forget that other people don't know what that means. It means learning difference or learning disability, but we call it LD. So Carly, why don't you start off on this one?
This is a subject I'm actually very passionate about. I think it's important to recognize every single part of a person. I'm a student with a learning disability. Yes, there's no disputing that. But I am also a student. I work crazy hard. I'd like to think I'm pretty smart. And there's a very large demographic where it's like, oh, you have a learning disability, you must be stupid. And you have to understand that a student is more than just a learning disability too. Because I'm more than that. I'm a sister. My little brother, who is a dork and he's the worst, but he also has a learning disability, and that's a way to connect. And it's important to recognize that I'm also Jewish, and I have very high achieving, high expectating parents who expect a lot from me, and I have to both achieve their goals and achieve standard goals in being a student with a learning disability. Not only is it difficult for me to be like functioning as a person, but it's also difficult for me to reach those high marks that my parents set for me and that I set for myself.
Awesome. Thank you. And Logan?
Yeah, I was just gonna, you know, I also feel really strong about this subject because, like I said before, you know, I identify as Black. I'm a Black man, and I also identify as dyslexic, and I also have ADHD. So for me, it's really important to emphasize the fact that you know, your identity is made up of so much things, so you could use those advantages to yourself. You know, I think it's really important that you understand how much your identity means. And I think it's really important that you understand, like, not only you are great, but like, you know, you also have to understand the fact that like what made you who you cannot forget like what made you who you are. So like for me, it's really important that I don't forget where I came from, because like I said before, I've come very far in life, and I at least I think I did. And I think that I've gone through so much loss to the point where I can never forget like what I identify as, or like what happened to me as a person, you know? So like I said, it's just really important for me to realize that, hey, I have all this background knowledge of me, so why can I not use it to my advantage? Just so.
I apologize for talking again, but this, it clicked for me also when Logan was talking. I was thinking something that I know is important to Logan and myself is mental health. And that's a part of why I thought this question was really important, is like being a high school student is really difficult already. You're changing the most as a person. We are growing, we are becoming adults. There are a lot of expectations. I have to get ready for college, and it impacts who I am as a person in terms of my mental health. I can assure you that there is no way that in school, every student is just fine, or like white, blonde, male, like doing just fine. I'm a woman also. That's something that I identify with. And there are bars that women have to compete with and contrast and I have to set myself and be successful, but I also have to take care of myself as a person. And I think a lot of times in high school, students are just set up for your next path and your next set to your future. And we forget that high school students are people too, or like are doing things and living their lives and experiencing things. And that's why I thought this is also very important to note.
Thank you for sharing that, Carly. I love that you got back on the mic. I think it's really interesting. We're so lucky that Carly and Logan are here sharing themselves and like opening up. But remember, we're going to have when these, I don't know if your school is back in session yet, or you're in hybrid model or virtual. When we get back into the classroom, there's going to be a lot of scholars that don't know how to express themselves. As you all know, as educators, we're going to be getting a flood of kids who just can't open up. So hopefully we can all be there for them and have these conversations. I almost feel like the social emotional piece is going to be at the forefront when we do go back into school. So I thank you, Logan and Carly, for sharing all those. Also, you two are amazing. The fact that you like know your feelings and can express them, that's huge. So thank you so much. Okay, last question. So if there is one thing you could tell your teachers, what would it be and why? Logan.
I can totally take it. Yeah. So one thing I would say to my teachers.
Uh-oh.
All right.
It's okay.
One thing I would like to say to my teachers is, you know, I appreciate them more than anything, and the fact that most of my teachers took the time out of their day to make sure that I was okay. And another thing I really liked is Carly emphasized mental health. Teachers, people who are teachers, have changed my life for the better because they also made sure that I don't go sad. And you know, mental health is really, really, really important to me. So the teachers who have helped me in the past also made sure that I was good, like in a mental health base, and like and I was in a good, like, mental state. Does that make sense? And I just really appreciate how not only have they changed my life for the better, but they changed other students' life for the better. And but I also want them to keep in mind that people who have LDs learn differently, and people who have LDs, they're not stupid. They just learn in a unique way. Does that make sense? That's what I'll say to them.
Thank you. Okay, Carly.
I would like to say to as many teachers as possible is every interaction that we have with you impacts us as people. Whether it be positive or negative, every interaction that we have, you are role models to us, and you are adults in our lives and people who can either deeply impact us in a positive way or potentially in a negative way. And I think being mindful of that and being aware that you are very powerful figures in our lives is very important.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, you're gonna make me cry. I'm gonna share something too because we have a little bit of time. But as a educator who has a learning disability, I've been teaching for almost 6 years now. And my first year teaching, I was put with this co-teacher who was also a special education teacher. I worked at a very large high school in San Diego, downtown San Diego. And she would always send me these emails, just like lists and lists of emails. They were long. Like I was getting overwhelmed. I was like, I can't read all these. So I had to go and tell her, like, this was my first time really in my new job. I was like, I have to open up and let me share about my learning difference. So I told her, I was like, I'm so sorry. Your emails are too intense. Like, I'm good with like bullet points. And I was like, I'm dyslexic. So like getting those large, because she was like, why isn't she responding to my emails? So it was really cool to be able to build that relationship with my co-teacher and her to like go in and read. And she was a special education teacher. So she went in and read everything about dyslexia because I was able to share with her how I learn and how I take information. And ever since then, she was always just sending me bullet points, reminding me. So it was really cool to have an ally who was my co-teacher, who was in the same position as me, there ready to support me. So this is a shout out to all the teachers out there on this Zoom. Even as a teacher, I am so grateful for every single one of you. With that being said, we're going to open up for questions. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and drop them in the chat, or you could just hop on the mic and ask if there's any questions or comments. Love to hear from you.
Hey, Vanessa, this is David. I think we were supposed to go into breakout rooms.
Yeah.
Yeah, not, do we want to do that early? Because we finished about 10 minutes early, so it's up to everyone else, however you want to do this.
Yeah, I think it's if we can go into the breakout sessions and we can fill up the time at the back end.
Okay, let's do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into breakout rooms. Some of you will be with me and Logan, and others will be with Carly and Robbie, and then we'll switch if I remember correctly. So then you can ask us questions that way, and we'll be in a smaller group setting.
Great. You'll all see a breakout room pop up in just a minute.
Awesome. So is everyone back? Yes. Can y'all hear me? And I'm sorry,
We can hear you.
Again, I've told everyone, because my internet's a little janky, you see two Robbies, only because if I went on one, you would help me on the other. But I'm going to attempt to share my screen right now with everyone, just to help sort of guide our larger group share out. So I think that you should still be able to see my screen. Just give me 1 second. If you can give me a thumbs up, letting me know that you're able to see my screen. Perfect. All right. So now that we are back, again, this is not meant to be scripted, but I would love to just hear from you. We heard from our students in their own words. And so to help sort of lead our discussion, or just lead our discussion or our time together now, sorry about that. Sorry. So I just want to help sort of lead our conversation. I want to know, or I posed a question rather, what do these students want you to know about having a learning difference? Now, before we get into that, we actually had, my computer is going AWOL right now. I'm so sorry. Before we actually get into that, in our breakout group, we actually had quite a few of our attendees talk about just how articulate our students are, which I found to be super, which I was also blown away myself by that. And I think my screen is no longer, can you guys see that?
We can still see your screen.
You can still see my screen, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I do apologize for my computer right now, but we don't necessarily need it to have this dialogue because it keeps going in and out. But I would like to just hear from you all. Some initial reactions, what stood out to you from Logan and Carly, or even answering the question, what is it that they want us to know about having a learning difference? And then when I stop speaking, you have the mic.
My biggest takeaways were that they are more than capable of high achievement. They just do it differently. And as educators, that's our job, is to figure out how they do it differently and teach them how to do it.
Thank you.
So I would have to agree. I think my biggest takeaway was realizing that they want everybody to learn. Everybody can learn. It's just a matter of finding how everybody learns.
Thank you.
Yeah, what I took away from that too was that we need to be able to treat them as a whole person, not just a learning disability. When I look at you, I don't label you as a learning disability. I see you and I treat you as a whole person. And I think that's what they want from us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Anyone else? So, in addition to thinking about what they want us to know about them, or just about students with learning differences in general, what personal connections can we actually make to maybe Carly or Logan's story? So, I taught for 7 years, but I also was a student with ADD, which was something that wasn't always taken seriously. It was just, he can't focus, so he's a troublemaker, and so I was one of those students that sort of just like slipped through the cracks, but I more so slipped through the cracks because my teachers didn't necessarily want to deal with me, or didn't know necessarily how. And that wasn't necessarily because they didn't want to, but that brings me sort of to my personal connection to maybe Carly and Logan, and maybe as one of those teachers in which they didn't feel as supported by, because I can even think my first 3 years as an educator, I had no idea how to teach individual students. I knew how to teach the class as a whole, but I had no idea how to maybe create that differentiated instruction or create that instruction to where I felt like I was reaching every individualized student, every individual student in my classroom. So I want to just at least ask the question to the room, you know, if you're an educator in the classroom, or maybe someone that is, again, connected to the class setting or the classroom setting, you know, maybe as a leader, school leader, or at a nonprofit similar to Eye to Eye, you know, do you have any personal connections that you can potentially make to Carly and Logan's story from today?
One of the things, when I think people have talked about this a little bit previously, is that identifying what a student is not just their disability. And whenever I go through an IEP, that's like one of the pieces that I really try to emphasize, that we don't want the IEP just to represent what they can't do. We want it to represent who they are as a person. That includes their learning style, but it also includes their strengths and the importance of the staff understanding and knowing that we really want to build upon their strengths, because every student has strengths. And I think if we can utilize that and incorporate it into our teaching style, students are going to be more successful.
Yeah.
So it's great. It's great to hear that's helpful for the kids to hear that as well, to know that.
To hear you bring that up, because one of the 3 key impacts that Eye to Eye that we really focus on are effective IEPs and 504 accommodations. So to hear you even bring that up and bring up the idea of an IEP, you know, also stating what they can do. Can it also state what they can do that is also accurate and also up to date, meaning that we've kept up with them, right? So I'm so happy that you said that, because that's something that we that we view as super important. So really having effective IEPs and a 504 accommodation. So not only saying what they can't do, but what they can and what are their strengths. And so that also helps the teachers as they progress. That's how you that's when we say we want to meet them where we are. Well, that is how we would actually effectively do that, right? So thank you for bringing that up.
Robbie, this is David. I wanted to jump in and share about my early teaching experience and how I identify with one of the educators mentioned. And I think there was this piece where Carly mentioned, you know, mental health, you know, don't forget about that. And I just remember me early on as an educator, I wish I could have taken time when I developed my lesson plans for the week and asked myself very intentional questions like, where here am I creating space to positively contribute to the mental health of my class? And then also thinking that where am I in this lesson plan agenda that I have for the week? Where am I creating space to allow space for student voice to happen, and put myself in a position to learn from my students to better adapt to their needs. And that type of thinking and thought into the way I built curriculum and lesson planning was so absent early on. And I just wish that I could turn back time, and I could see that when a teacher does at least create space to ask those questions, how it could be transformational, right? And we could be more, you know, maybe one day, you know, more and more stories, kids could share more and more stories about how we positively impacted them when we create those 2 things, you know. And that's just my aha moment as I continue to learn from our kids at Eye to Eye. So
could I add something to what David just said? Because that resonated with me as an educator, because it's really sometimes less is more. If you don't teach 3 stories, I'm an English teacher. If you don't teach 3 stories, but you only teach 1, and that 1 is relevant to the kids and gives them a chance to really interact with the story and get something out of it in a personal way, I think the learning sometimes is deeper and longer lasting. But beyond that, Carly and Logan both referred to one thing that I really find very, very important in any relationship, and that is the word relationship. They both spoke about the power and the validation that meant so much to each of them when they had that mentor who believed in them just as people, with nothing to do with their disability or their strengths, but just as human beings, somebody that they could trust and speak with. And to me, that's fundamental. And it can't be written down in an IEP or any place else, because it's individual to each person and the relationship between that student and that teacher.
You're right. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. We could take one or two more comments before we move a little bit further into our presentation. So please, if anyone else feels moved to speak, please share. This is your space to do so. All right, so we will move right along, and just sort of going off, and we all know that, but it's just important that we stress that as educators, we know that we play that significant role in how our students view their learning difference. So if you're not familiar, I think most of us are familiar with Eye to Eye, but if you're not, we are currently right now, we just launched our educator training program that we are super excited about. I'm super excited to actually be leading, sort of helping to lead the facilitation of our LD 101 sessions. But we also have a online Thinkific course that you're able to find more information about on our website, which I have right here. But I am going to briefly go over two strategies that really, I mentioned earlier that I just becoming a humble learner, right? And what does that mean? That simply means being flexible in our thinking, right? So these two strategies are super simple, yet very impactful if utilized effectively in the classroom in order to help you become that humble learner of your students. And those two strategies are shadowing the student and empathy interviews. Now, so shadowing the student, what is that, right? So it's simply the process of following your student for a day, allowing you to really view their school experience from their eyes. Now, when some of us think of shadowing the student, I know we think of observing, right? But this is very different from observing because you're not, because and when you think of observing a student, we are sometimes looking at performance. And what is that performance? It's typically behavior, right? This is totally different, especially for students with learning differences, because you really want to because before you actually do that, you want to actually know what it is that you're looking for, right? So if you have a student that has a learning difference, you want to shadow the student, but you want to shadow that student for a very specific purpose, right? And then use that information, that data, to help you take insight-driven action to help create change and a supportive environment in your classroom. Now, because this is also a part of our Thinkific course as well, so I do encourage you to go to our website, register, and take the course. But you also, I think we have a participant folder. We provided a strategy guide that would actually also go into detail of how you might carry this out, right? But I'm going to sort of plug Thinkific course again. We sort of give a little bit more detail on what that could potentially look like virtual, right? So I know some of us are virtual and not face-to-face. So we sort of give a little insight. It's kind of like my plug to encourage you to actually take the course, right? And so our second strategy that I would like to go over are empathy interviews. Now, this is probably one of my favorite of the two. I love, when I was a teacher, again, I taught for 7 years, and I loved to conduct empathy interviews with my students because it gave me an opportunity to not only have that one-on-one with them, but it was like a very focused one-on-one. Like it wasn't just a one-on-one in which I was asking, how's your day going? How's your family? Which all that is super important as well. This is more curated or more centered around their academic performance and why they may or may not be as successful in my class, or if we're having a one-on-one and they're telling me their successes, they're also able to share with me what's hindering their success. So whether that be in my class, in math class, science class, whatever, or just even socially, because that's also that's also very important social emotional skills, right? So that's also important when you think about a student with learning differences as well, right? So these are opportunities for you to spend time one-on-one with the student asking open-ended questions about their learning experience. So basically what I just said, right? And then you can use those insights, of course, to again improve the learning environment and better meet their needs. Now, this course, we've also been doing, we've had a chance to facilitate a lot of live sessions as well of LD 101. But this course really is a great introductory course on building empathy as well as sort of giving you a teaser for our next training, which is gonna focus heavily on creating that supportive environment. So like in LD 101, you're learning a lot about, building empathy as well as becoming a humble learner. But now that you've become that humble learner, we're gonna take it to the next level and think about, well, how do I now take that data and create that supportive environment? So those are two strategies. Again, both of these strategy guides have been provided. If they haven't already, they will be provided to you. And so before I actually turn it back over to Emily, this is just in our reflection, this just to go back to our buzzword of empathy. This is the moment for empathy, right? And the power that we have as educators to really play that critical and that significant role in how our students view their learning experience is so important, right? And just even if you were to take the chance and shadow a student or even conduct an empathy interview, what could the impact be, right? Just from doing that, right? If nothing else, you're definitely becoming that humble learner, and that you're also really having the opportunity to know what you can do to help further create a supportive and conducive learning environment for not only your students with learning differences, but all of your students. So just know that we at Eye to Eye, we believe in the power of students and who learn and think differently. And so we also believe in your power, again, that you hold as educators in influencing their learning journey. So I appreciate you for taking time out to really to listen to me. I will turn it back over to Emily now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rob.
Oh, go ahead, Emily.
Thanks, Diana. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Wilson, the Essex County Learning Community Project Manager. Thank you so much, Robbie, for that amazing overview. And I just wanted to plug really quickly before I hand it over to my colleague, Diana LeBeau, that the participant folder is now being added to the chat. So you will all have that today as your sort of goodie bag shared resource folder for attending today. And next, I'm going to turn it over to you, Diana, to take us to our next segment. Thank you again so much, Robbie, for that incredible overview. We're so lucky to be learning from you today and to have these resources.
And I know Emily is chatting that to you now. We also ask you to stick around for a few minutes because we have some additional resources and tools for you at the end. But before we go there, I want to thank I have 4 thank yous right now. The first thank you is to our Eye to Eye team who have organized this wonderful workshop for us. Our second thank you is to our fantastic student panelists, Carly and Logan, as well as Vanessa and Robbie, but really shout out to the students, since I know it takes a great deal of bravery to speak to a virtual room full of adults. I want to say a huge thank you to the very generous sponsors of the Essex County Learning Community, the Tower Foundation, without whom this event would not be possible. And finally, a huge thank you to you all for your engagement and participation over the course of the last hour and 10 minutes now. Really wonderful. The fact that you're here really signals your deep commitment to doing wonderful things for children. With that, I have one thing for you all right now. I promise it's worth it to stick it out for a few more minutes. We are asking you to complete this 2-minute survey for us. And when you're done with that survey, we have a few more things to share with you all. So please don't go anywhere. You can open this up in your browser right now. And once you've opened it, you can either complete it right away. We're going to pause for about 60 seconds and give you a chance to complete it. If you don't get a chance to, it'll be open in your browser. But we deeply value your feedback as the Essex County Learning Community works to add as many helpful and really first-rate events for you all as we can. So I'll pause for those 60 seconds and we'll be right back to share a little bit more with you. For those of you who are not yet familiar with the Essex County Learning Community, I really would love to give you the opportunity to learn a little bit more about us. So if you haven't learned about it, I'm going to put the address in the chat. So you can check out EssexCountyLC.org to learn more about the Essex County Learning Community. I know some folks are joining us today from other wonderful communities in Essex County that are not yet part of our learning community officially. However, once you're here, we consider you a part of our wider community, and we're really excited that you've joined us. With that, I'm going to turn it over to David, who will close us out and share a little bit more from the Eye to Eye team.
Great. Thank you so much, Diana. So in closing, I wanted to share one slide with you all, and hopefully this will help you not only think about how you support different learners, but then also think about maybe exploring the conversation further with how Eye to Eye might be able to help you come alongside of your school community and be a partner. With Eye to Eye, we believe in elevated student voice, and we believe that schools just can't stop there. We have to kind of think about building the supportive environment around that student voice. We kind of focus on social emotional development, helping them build positive identity. But if they have an elevated voice, but their surrounding environment is not ready for that voice to be supported, it can position things like trauma and other things that suppress that voice, and then we lose all the progress that we've built over the time in working with the student. So Eye to Eye, we believe in supportive environments, and we want to come alongside of your school community and really help build that supportive environment through professional development, focusing on building empathetic educators and really focusing on general educators. We want every student in your building to be, every teacher in your building to be ready to respond to that elevated voice with empathy. And then we understand that parents have a lot of anxiety. They have a lot of worry, desperation. Sometimes they feel like the sky is falling. They're having a hard time really establishing a hopeful future and thinking of as their own children on what does their path to success look like. Well, we offer virtual talks and speaking engagements for parents, where our founder, David Flink, our CEO, is not only he's the author of the book Thinking Differently, and it was a guide for parents, and he's willing to do virtual talks for school communities, and we're making that available for school districts. And then finally, when it comes to the other element, the final element of supportive environments, is we're looking at inclusive student communities. We want to make sure that bullying is not something that takes that steps up in elevated voices when it comes to learning differences. We want to help students understand and develop a great sense of neurodiversity and awareness. And we want to work with your school, with your school district, to work and not only just empowering your students and developing your students, but also helping you build that supportive environment and being a partner. And if that's something that you want to do, we're going to be sharing a link on the chat where you can submit an inquiry and be directly communicating with me. And I'd love to schedule a conversation so that we can learn more about your needs, and I can share a little bit more how we empower districts, and then we can have that conversation further. But even if you don't want to explore that conversation with us, I hope the diagram that I just shared allows you to think about informing your own district strategy on how to create a supportive environment around elevated student voice. And with that said, thank you very much, and I'll kick it back to them.
Great. I'm going to post the participant folder one more time for you all so that you can make sure you access those resources. With that, I want to thank you all for being here, and I hope you all have a wonderful end of your Wednesday afternoon.